Well, today, lawmakers return to the state capitol. Both Republicans and Democrats are expected to focus on issues central to their base ahead of the critical 2026 midterm elections.
Atlanta News First Niamani Watson is live outside of the state capitol. So Niamani, what are some of the priorities for this session?
Well, lawmakers will be discussing property and state income taxes, helping out healthcare workers, and increasing Georgia's literacy rates. Now, House Speaker John Burns says his #1 priority is to increase the state literacy rates. He wants to expand testing for dyslexia and place a literacy coach in every Georgia middle school. Lawmakers will also take up bills, including one that would ban cell phones in every high school. Burns says he also wants to bolster the state's health care workforce by expanding residencies and opening more training schools. Now, when it comes to taxes, the Senate wants to eliminate Georgia's income tax. Meanwhile, Burns says the House wants to lower property taxes. But there are questions about whether Georgia's budget could absorb the losses of both revenue streams.
We're open to working with any plan that benefits Georgians when it comes to taking care of them, if that's reduction or elimination of the state income tax. But we have to have the details, and it has to work.
Now, a large crowd is also expected here at the state capitol today, made up of organizations, lobbyists, and protesters, hoping to speak with lawmakers as the legislative session reconvenes. Live outside the state capitol in downtown Atlanta, I'm Niamani Watson, Atlanta News First.
All right, Niamani.